The ballroom was silent when the woman pointed toward the grand piano and smiled. "If you can play this piano," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I'll marry you." A few guests laughed. Others looked at the black janitor standing near the doorway. He was holding a mop in one hand and a bucket in the other. His uniform was plain, his shoes were worn, and nobody in that room expected him to say a word. But what happened next would change the way everyone saw him. The evening had begun as a celebration of wealth and success inside one of the city's most expensive hotels. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, expensive suits filled the room, and famous business leaders talked about investments, companies, and millions of dollars. At the center of the gathering stood a billionaire named Adrian Cole. He had built his fortune through technology and real estate, and he was used to being the most important person in every room. Beside him stood Elena, the daughter of a powerful family and a talented pianist herself. She had been surrounded by wealthy men for years, but she often complained that money did not tell her who a person truly was. That night, however, she decided to make a joke that would go too far. A polished black piano stood near the stage. Elena walked toward it and placed her hand gently on its surface. Then she looked at Adrian and laughed. "You always say nobody here is good enough for me," she said. "So let's make it interesting." Everyone turned toward her. She pointed toward the janitor. The room became uncomfortable. The janitor's name was Marcus Reed. He was 42 years old and had worked at the hotel for nearly 8 years. Most guests barely noticed him. They saw the uniform, not the man. They saw someone who cleaned floors, emptied trash, and quietly disappeared before important people entered the room. Elena smiled. "If he can play this piano," she said, "I'll marry him." Laughter spread through the ballroom. Adrian laughed the loudest. Marcus stood still. He had heard jokes like that before. Not always about him, but about people who looked like him. He knew what it felt like to walk into a store and be followed. He knew what it felt like when people assumed he was uneducated because of his job. He knew that sometimes discrimination did not arrive as an insult. Sometimes it arrived as a smile, a joke, or a quiet decision to underestimate you. He looked at the piano. Then he looked at Elena. "I don't need you to marry me," Marcus said calmly. The laughter stopped. Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Then why don't you prove you can play?" Marcus placed the bucket down. He slowly walked toward the piano. Nobody moved. The room watched him sit on the bench. For a moment, he simply stared at the keys. Then his fingers touched them. The first notes were soft. Beautiful. The laughter disappeared. Marcus began playing with a confidence that shocked everyone in the room. His hands moved across the keyboard with control and emotion. The music grew stronger, filling the ballroom with something nobody expected to hear from the man they had just mocked. People stopped talking. Some lowered their phones. Others stared at each other in disbelief. Marcus was not simply playing the piano. He was telling a story. Every note carried years of struggle, sacrifice, loneliness, and hope. His mother had taught him to play when he was a child. She had once told him that music was one place where nobody could tell him that he did not belong. But life had taken him in another direction. After his mother died, Marcus had abandoned his dream. He worked wherever he could find honest employment. He became a husband, then a father. He cleaned offices during the day and sometimes practiced piano late at night when his family was asleep. He never stopped loving music. He simply stopped believing the world had a place for him on a stage. Until that night, when the final note faded, the room remained silent. Then someone began clapping. Another person joined. Within seconds, the entire ballroom erupted in applause. Elena stood frozen. Adrian was no longer laughing. Marcus stood up and straightened his uniform. A wealthy businessman near the stage whispered, "Where did you learn to play like that?" Marcus looked at him. "My mother taught me." Someone asked why he had never performed professionally. Marcus smiled faintly. "Because people usually decide what you are before they ask who you are." Those words hit the room harder than the music. Elena walked toward him. "I'm sorry," she said. Marcus nodded. "I accept your apology." She looked embarrassed. "I judged you because of your job." Marcus answered, "That's what happens when people confuse someone's position with their worth." Nobody laughed. Adrian approached Marcus next. For years, he had believed wealth made him powerful. But standing in front of Marcus, he suddenly understood something money had never taught him. A person's dignity could not be purchased. "I owe you an apology too," Adrian said. Marcus looked directly into his eyes. "You do?" Adrian extended his hand. Marcus shook it. But he did not do it because Adrian was a billionaire. He did it because he had decided not to let humiliation turn him into someone bitter. The next morning, a video of Marcus playing the piano spread across the internet. Millions watched it. People shared his story, but Marcus refused to become famous simply because a wealthy room had underestimated him. Instead, he started teaching children from his neighborhood how to play music. He told them the same thing his mother had once told him. Never let somebody else's opinion become the limit of your dreams. Months later, Marcus performed at a community concert. His family sat in the front row, watching proudly as he walked onto the stage. There was no billionaire beside him, no wealthy crowd judging him, no expensive ballroom, just a piano, his family, and hundreds of people who had come to listen. Marcus placed his hands on the keys, and when he began to play, everyone understood the truth that the ballroom had forgotten. A uniform does not measure intelligence. A job does not measure worth. A person's skin does not determine their ability, and dignity does not belong only to the rich. That night, Marcus did more than play a piano. He reminded everyone watching that people who are ignored can still possess extraordinary gifts. People who are underestimated can still rise, and people who have been treated as invisible can still command an entire room without saying a single word. He had walked into that ballroom, carrying a mop. He walked out carrying something far more valuable: respect. And this time, nobody had to give it to him. He had never lost it in the first place.